brought a stack of books today.
Yes, I did. Just a couple.
That's still nice though. I see your 1984 King. I'm so excited.
You should. I've got to stop. I've got a problem. I've got it stacked this high with books this morning.
Yeah.
Just the books I got this
I
morning.
know, and I have had so many really great thrift hauls right now because a lot of the thrift stores in the area weren't taking anything. They just were not taking any donations, but they've started coming back with books and things like that because they're realizing, hey, people are looking for reading material in case we have another shutdown because of the Delta variant or whatever. So they're starting to take book donations and they're super cheap on sale. Like even like the $1 hardcovers are like 5 cents in a lot of places right now.
Yeah.
So I'm like super capitalizing on that. But now I have all these stacks of books and I'm like, I need to start doing like thrift store haul videos or something because
We should. And
Yeah.
I saw a video this morning
yeah.
on YouTube. Probably can't hear me, but I saw a video this morning on YouTube that was saying how there is a paper shortage right now
Oh, interesting.
worldwide, and that's
Oh.
going to slow down publishers.
Yeah.
And so bookstores are not going to have as many copies, they're not going to be able to provide as many copies, and the
Yeah.
prices are going to go up
Yep.
naturally.
Yep.
So, best resource for somebody that wants to keep buying books is
Yeah.
to hit those thrift stores, hit those used stores, go, recycle, read used books.
Yes, and the mini libraries, those are a big thing around here. They're getting packed. Like trying to stuff any of my used books that I don't want to donate, I try to stuff them in mini libraries. Like there's one over here at the beach. It's packed. People are stacking outside of the mini library right now.
Yeah.
Like they're just putting them on the ground because, you know, it's a take one, give one, but some people are like, hey, these are really great books. I want to pass them on to people. And they're doing like cool stuff in them now where like people are writing their names like it was a library card or whatever. So they know previous people who have read it. It's kind of fun. Like people are really doing really cool things, I think, post-pandemic in regards to literature, especially like used literature. So I think it's really cool. I'm very excited about that because I feel like there's a lot of great access to literature now that there hadn't been before because people are choosing to do these mini libraries in your yard or in their, you know, on the street corners, at the beach. I love the one at the beach. I think it's just so great that people are sitting there and actually like, here's a great beach read and just going and stuffing those things. I think that's, I really appreciate that people are doing that.
Oh my goodness.
So we have a little rush in here. This is nice.
Yeah, I can't even hear you.
I'm sorry.
There's no way the camera's going to be picking this
well.
up.
Oh
We should
well.
let it settle down a minute.
Yeah, that's all right. It's good for them though. Yesterday I was talking to the girls.
It is.
Talking to the girls yesterday, like we were just so sore from all the running around between this little triangle counter here, because we had a street festival going on out here. We had a thing called Ethnic Fest, in case you could hear me. And they were just packed and busy, and I was like, good for you, but also I'm so these two are introverts like me, so I just. They're like, I was just focused on getting the work done. We did not pay attention to the crowds. We just did our best.
Something like that should be out there.
I know. They should have like a third person come out and just do like even samples or something. Little like yeah.
Blends or something.
Yeah. I thought that would be great, but they were packed, so good for them. I just feel bad. Because they're like super busy. And it's such a small space that they have here. Like there's the rest of the like store going on that other people could kind of like go through, but their line was almost out the door. Felt so bad.
Kind of like that last week when we were in here.
Yeah, it was pretty busy.
It's actually good to see.
Yeah, it is. Especially now that they've got like their pumpkin spice and fall flavors coming in.
Yeah.
I love seeing that. It's good.
Well, so what have you been doing the last 2 weeks?
Oh, last 2 weeks. I have been trudging through the usual. I still haven't gotten back to that Joan of Arc book yet, but I have gotten a little bit more through A for Andromeda, which I'm really enjoying. It's a good kind of like cosmic horror-esque book, so I'm really enjoying that. Despite how old it is, it actually translates really well to modern times.
I see. I prefer the older books.
Yeah,
I don't think there's
I-
anything wrong with
No,
something from the
it's-
1950s.
and
like
it's
that old.
not like it's a very heavy read, because there's a lot of like comedy in the midst of the drama and the science stuff and all the other things going on. So I feel like it's a really good piece of literature. It's a quick read. It's like under 200 pages. It's just taking me time because I have so many other things I'm reading, but I'm actually really enjoying it.
Yeah, I feel like we're gonna 5 of these shows from now. You're still gonna be finishing up.
I'm sure. Because I find other things that I keep like throwing in there and trickle in. So I'm terrible that way, where it's like I start reading things and then I find other stuff that looks so good to read and they're all so different. And I do that on purpose so I don't start mixing stories together. But they're all so different that I feel like I'm a chronic reader. It's
Yeah.
really what it is. I'm a very chronic and ADD reader, so it's kind of like I have this stack of books next to my bed about like, what do I feel like reading today? And sometimes I put other things off to the side because this is just the way I feel today.
Yeah.
And I just read like that. So, but A for Andromeda so far was really great. I'm enjoying it a lot. I still haven't picked up the Southern Books Club's guide to Slaying Vampires, but I do have my other friend. She and I are gonna try and tag team read it together because she picked it up. She's not usually into horror, but she's really enjoying the comedy aspect that's sprinkled throughout.
Yeah, it kind of goes away. After
I know,
the beginning,
and
but-
I warned her of that, but she picked it up, and so far she's liking it. It's very funny. At the very beginning, it's very funny.
It
So
is.
enjoying the little bits that I keep going back to with that one. I'm reading Good Fairy, Bad Fairy by Brian Froud.
Oh yeah.
And I love his artwork as an illustrator. He's fantastic. For people who don't know who he is, he was one of the art directors and Imagineers, so to speak, of The Dark Crystal and Labyrinth with Jim Henson.
Yeah, I think.
He and his
I think
wife both were.
conceived those and
Yes.
got Henson on board to
Yes.
develop it.
He was basically the main story.
'Cause
Storyboard
before
behind
that, he just did an art book of fairies that became a bestseller in the late
Yes.
1970s.
Yep. So it's really interesting because he's actually very much an occultist and like really believes in this other realm of fairies and angels and very metaphysical aspects. So it's really cool to see it coming from his perspective. He genuinely believes that the fairies that he draws were mused to him in some manner, either by the fairies themselves. So it's a very interesting read. I also really like because he like integrates so many little bits of his own personal life into it. So you get kind of this look at what this man's life looks like, not just from, this book on all these fairies that he believes were inspired by the actual fairies to be illustrated by him, so to speak. But you see like the little bits of his daily like snapshots of his life in between, because he'll tell you like he has this fairy that he believes is called the Keeper of the Gate, and he believes that he got the impression of this fairy because every day he would take his son to go on into the school bus, and after the school bus left, he would sit there and pray for his son's day and all this other stuff, and then he started getting impressions of this being that was protecting his gate because he feels like he called it there to be this protector through his prayer life. So there's this really interesting like metaphysical aspect to it, and there's little snapshots of his actual life, and he expresses frustrations through these illustrations too, because some of these fairies are he believes innately frustrating to deal with, and so he illustrates those frustrations as like a physical being, so to speak, or ethereal being of some kind, and I think it's really kind of cool. So it's a really interesting read, just getting the snapshots of his life in between what he actually believes about the fairy realm or like other realms that coexist alongside ours, different vibrations, different metaphysical beliefs. It's very interesting, especially because he like was in the 70s when that was a big thing. Everybody's starting to kind of go into that like very heighten your vibration sort of metaphysical things. So that's been a really interesting read. Alongside that, I have been reading Sir Arthur Conan Doyle's The Coming of Fairies, which is about the Cottingley fairy photographs. I think it's Cottingley or something.
I think so.
Yeah, the Carpenter family's images of fairies by those two young ladies,
Yeah.
which ended up, people wrote it off as a hoax.
If anybody saw the movie Photographing
Yeah.
Fairies, that's what it's talking about.
Yeah, it's a really good, interesting story, but Sir Arthur Conan Doyle was a huge part of investigating whether that was true or not. And The Coming of Fairies is basically his correspondence with the investigation teams, with the family, all these other things, trying to figure out if these are authentic or non-authentic images. The images were not in the book because I got a downloaded version from Project Gutenberg.
Yeah.
So I had to Google the images. It is ridiculously how fake they are. They are so fake. Like, you just look at them and it's like, these are clearly illustrated fairies.
Yeah.
Clearly. But back then, they were so impressionable.
Nobody had seen it.
Nobody had seen
Photography
people
was
do
really
that.
new.
Yeah, so they were like, it was very split. Then you had all these occultists and spiritualists who really wanted these to be real.
That's the key. People wanted it.
Yes. And then you have the photographers and other people who are like, this is easy to replicate. But the whole thing was, how do these two young children know how to replicate this if they didn't have experience in photography? So that was a huge controversy at the time. There was a lot of there are clips and excerpts from articles between both sides that Sir Arthur Conan Doyle put in this, where they're just bashing shit out of each other over it. Sir Arthur Conan Doyle himself really wanted them to be real, and through most of the book, as far as I've gotten, he is very adamant about hey, we're seeking truth, but I think these are real.
Yeah.
So it was but I mean, I just looked at them from my modern eyes, and I was like, these are clearly illustrated fairies. How do you believe otherwise? But they had rationale where it's well, of course they're ethereal beings. Why would they look real to us? Why would they not look like cardboard cutouts? And there were some techniques in the photographs that, yes, it was very unexplainable at the time for children who didn't know what they were talking about. So that's been an interesting read too, especially alongside Brian Froud's book. So it's really interesting, kind of seeing the different arguments and things like that. And Sir Arthur Conan Doyle eventually did have to come out and say, yes, these are fake images when the hoax came out, and express his disappointment and all this other stuff too. But so I know the end result, but I just want to see what the argument was between everybody about these infamous photographs. So yeah, I'm kind of on a fairy kick right now, and that's kind of what I've been reading the last couple weeks. And then of course, My Friend the Murderer I just got through by Sir Arthur Conan Doyle. Enjoyed that one. We're going to do a video of that one. And it's a short story, but I got a lot out of it just because my family's had experience hiring ex-cons and people who were just released from prison when my dad was self-employed. So I have a very interesting perspective, I think, on that story based off of that.
Okay.
But yeah, that's pretty much what I've been reading last 2 years. I'm enjoying it.
See, I think the whole fairy realm thing, people have it a little bit wrong. It's actually a vampire realm, and it opens up into our world every August. And right now there's a hell of a lot of them.
Yeah, seriously.
Swatting them every day.
Yep. Yes, all the little mosquitoes. Seriously.
Vampires coming in.
Bugs are so bad.
Yep.
They are. I'm sure I killed multiple fairies thinking they were mosquitoes.
Yep.
I'm sure I did. But yeah. So what are you reading? What are you up to?
I haven't been doing a lot of reading. I read My Friend the Murderer, finished it.
Yep.
I'm ready for us to do that video. Otherwise, I've been reading this one, Yesterday's Tomorrows, by a guy who's basically a literature professor. I don't know if he's officially a professor, but he's been heavily involved in the history of science fiction and writing books about it, publishing anthologies of important science fiction stories. One of the first science fiction books I bought was one of his called Souls and Metal was all robot stories.
Ooh,
Excellent,
interesting.
excellent
Okay.
book. But he's been doing a lot of anthologies with the British Library. One of the universities are doing these with him. British Library Board is all it says. But he published this one. It's the story of classic British science fiction in 100 books.
Nice.
So he goes through and he talks about all these books that were influential in developing science fiction in Britain. And a lot of them have been influential on all the
Modern
other,
readers.
all the other writers around the world as
That's
well.
awesome.
You know. There's of course a whole chapter on H.G. Wells. And, he's into a chapter on the early dystopias. He's about to get into Brave New World. as
I
well.
love Brave New World. That was a good one.
It's a very, very good book. It was just published in June, I think it was released, and I ordered this and got it, and I've kind of been mostly been reading it in between other things, but I picked it up and just because I wanted a change,
Yeah.
and so I started getting back into that and I've been reading that just recently.
Yeah.
Very, very interesting. You know, I constantly am hearing people about older science fiction, but if you read a book like this, you'll see that what you're reading today owes everything to those old ones.
It really does. It really does.
Some of them just have really coffee already.
Some of it I think was the stealing machine. We're gonna be fighting that sound a little bit today. I'm just
So-
glad we're busy. Go local commerce.
Yeah, it's a good thing.
It is.
So yeah, if you want to learn more about how we got to where we are today, which I think is important, this is a really good book. For it.
Yeah.
It's
Yesterday's tomorrow's, is it?
Yesterday's Tomorrow.
Yesterday's tomorrow.
And it's a paperback, which I normally hate,
Yeah.
but it's a very well made paperback.
Yeah, I like the
It's
illustration.
Quality.
There's illustrations in it.
Not so much inside. There's a section in the middle of
I see.
old photos and covers and stuff,
Oh,
which is
that's
cool.
cool.
Yeah.
Full colors.
Uh-huh.
Death of a World. Things of interest.
So that's an awesome book.
It is. Brave New World. I love that. Brave New World is probably one of my favorite dystopian. Utopian dystopian? Like, what would you call it? Because it's a utopia. What the utopia ends up being is dystopian. So I don't quite know what genre it would be considered
I think it's generally considered dystopian.
dystopian.
You know, it portrays a world, a scientific utopia, which pretty much everybody agrees would be dehumanizing if it was purely that and nothing else.
Yeah. So it's a good one.
Yeah.
I like that.
And that kind of leads me into another British dystopia.
Another favorite of mine.
The rest of the month I've just been receiving and buying other books that I haven't read yet.
Send me
I've
your
never read this.
receipts.
Oh yeah.
You're like, no, not now. It's too late. Too late for us.
Well, this one, I actually bought this in June of 2020.
I know. I remember you saying you've been waiting for it for a while.
Because of a number of production issues, it
Yeah.
took that long, and I just finally received this is the cheap artist edition of the Sun Tub 1984 by George Orwell.
Oh, look at that foil printing.
$120 book.
Oh my goodness,
Beautiful.
fully illustrated.
Beautiful illustrations by Jim Burns. And well, this one and the other one I have are by my two favorite publishers right now. This one is Kafka on the Shore.
Oh,
Just was released this month.
beautiful. I saw the picture you posted
Shipped
with that.
right away.
Yeah.
This is Haruki Murakami. I haven't read him yet, but this again is a beautiful book. Yeah, papers.
Has a really light, I don't know if you can see it in the video at all, but it's a really light kind of silver printing on dark red, and that is just stunning.
Reminds me almost of the Voyager plate.
Yeah.
And other illustrations throughout. Beautiful typography as always.
I'm a sucker for dark cover books too. Like the whole like black cover book and like
Very different sort
navy
of
color book.
illustration.
Ooh.
But nice.
Yeah, it's very like science book looking.
Well, you know, the blue is what sold it.
Yeah.
It's my favorite
No, I
color.
love that
color.
though. Like that dark navy and black books right now are a big favorite of mine, just because it's not been done for so long. People just didn't do black or dark navy book covers. They always did the light, frilly, pretty stuff. Which isn't bad, like it's beautiful and it's all right, but this is just so appealing to me because it is so different. I love that. I want that tattoo. I don't even see that. It'll even,
A little bit.
it's like a perfect tattoo. Tiny tattoo.
Yeah.
I love that.
So it's another $120 book.
Send me your receipts.
Yeah.
I still love these interior pages. Like I don't even know if you can see it kinda when I go like that. There's like this really beautiful light on, like very transparent, remarkably transparent for a metallic.
Yeah. What's perfect for another paper?
It is. Oh, that's gorgeous. There's a little puppy right there. Or maybe a cat. I can't quite tell. Looks like a dog. Maybe. That is so cool. That's beautiful.
Right. So, like I say, these are my favorite book publishers. Suntup is amazing. They do extremely high quality books, but as you can tell from this one, most of theirs you don't have to wait quite so long for, but you still typically wait 6-7 months after you buy it.
Yeah.
And they're usually sold out the first day they start selling.
Yeah.
And they don't print more copies once they're sold out. They're just gone forever.
Yeah.
So if you miss out on the first day when they announce it, well, you can sometimes find them on eBay for like $5,000.
I know. People are like, yeah.
Yeah.
Gotta go on this one. Yeah.
Well, that's a problem Suntup has had is people jumping on there, buying multiple copies just because
The
they know they can
vultures.
sell them for
Yeah, people
500%
scalping.
profit after Suntup sells out. So they've actually had to print more and do, and limit the number of copies one person can buy and do stuff like that to try and keep the legitimate customers
Yeah.
from being blocked out of the market.
Yeah. And people are also like doing bots and stuff, buy bots, where the second something drops, they just buy up multiple copies for you automatically. I think that's been a huge issue from what my friend was telling me in the computer industry right now with all kinds of motherboards and silicone, all this reduction and limited quantity stuff because of how production has been kind of slowed down with COVID.
Yeah.
It's been a huge issue, I think, all around for any kind of collector's item or any kind of computer stuff. People are just having these bots just buy things up so that they can scalp it all later on the internet. It's really frustrating.
Yeah, so I actually prefer Folio to Suntup because they are a bigger organization. They usually publish more copies. They do limited editions that do sell out and then they're gone.
Yeah.
But most of their books are not limited editions. You can keep buying them for a whole year or more later. They're still available on their website.
Yeah.
And a lot of their prices are a lot less. Some of their books you can get for $50 as opposed to Suntup, which you can't touch for less than $200 now. And that's just for the inexpensive artist edition. Their lettered edition typically sells for $2,000 to $2,500 for one book. And so Folio is the company to go to if you're not independently filthy rich.
Yeah. Well, those are
Because
beautiful.
they are Folio is doing a wonderful job with their books, and and sometimes these companies are hit or miss. Sometimes they put an edition out there with illustrations, and I just look at it and go, "What are you thinking? I'm not going to pay $200 for those illustrations."
Art is very subjective. Some people love it, some people hate it, and it is hit or miss. Just because people's tastes are so subjective when it comes to visual art and digital media and anything like that. So, makes sense.
Like Suntop earlier this year published Island of Dr. Moreau,
Yeah.
which hasn't sold well for them. They still have copies available.
Okay.
And I think a lot of that is because the illustrations were technically really
Yeah.
beautiful illustrations. But the illustrations are all of animals in normal people's clothes.
Oh. So
And
it didn't
that's
translate
just
well.
not,
They made them far more
it's,
humanoid.
it's what Dr. Moreau was doing in the novel, was trying to make animals into people, but
That was
the
felt like a
illustrations
cop
just
out.
were cheesy.
Yeah, it was a cop out. It felt like a cop out.
It's like dress up your dog in a ballerina costume.
There was a
kind stuff.
version of
I just
it.
didn't like it.
I can't remember who did it. There was a graphic novel version that I read that my husband had of Island of Dr. Moreau, where they did a really good job rendering these monstrosity of humanoid creature men. It was really well done. And I can't remember who illustrated it or what publisher it came from. But it was awesome.
Yeah.
Maybe it was Dark Horse. Probably Dark Horse. They do a lot of stuff. But I can't remember off the top of my head. It was really good though.
I didn't like the Easton Press version that came out a couple of years ago either,
Yeah.
because that one, they got some kind of comic book illustrator, and I felt that wasn't appropriate for the novel. Nothing against comic book illustrators,
Yeah.
but
Sometimes the
I
artwork
just
just
wanted
doesn't
something different
translate.
for Dr. Moreau for my collection.
Yeah.
So what I went with was the Beehive books, which is a really large size book, but the graphic design and illustration is just amazing, and I feel totally appropriate for that book.
Yeah, that is one thing I'm having a hard time right now. I'm finding a lot of really great books that have awesome illustrations in them, but they're so large and I've got these tiny hands. I like holding, I love this Brian Froud book I'm reading, but it's built like a coffee table book because you want these illustrations to be big. There's lots of details in them. There's multiple faces, multiple fairies in them.
Yeah.
And so you want them to be large scale, but I'm holding this thing and after 15 minutes, my hands and wrists are in so much pain just from trying to hold and stabilize, even though it's hardcover too. Holding and stabilizing it, I'm doing a lot of I'll just let my neck hurt because I have to lay it down and look down at it to read it.
That's what I
Because
do
if
with the,
Yeah, that's kind of what I have to do.
Coffee table books.
Yeah, you just lay them down and just read them. I've been doing that a lot in bed and my poor neck. But what can you do? It's good. It's good literature, so you don't want to give it up. That's kind of how I felt about Bones and Keeps too. That book was just so large and so hard to hold and fight. But I loved the story in it, so I kept pursuing it. But that was a workout on my very weak hands and wrists. So I started taking water yoga, and they do a whole hands and wrists routine. I'm like, oh gosh, this is gonna help me reading books. But oh my goodness, it is a workout.
I just get a different book.
Yeah. Just gonna start lifting books like this, just so I can work out my wrists and hands a little bit more. But yeah, fighting the size of some of these books, especially if you're really into illustrations, has been an interesting issue I've had as a person with very weak, tiny hands.
Well, there's a lot of these older books really weren't. They were this formative.
Yeah.
They were this size.
I was
Which is a really good size to hold, and they are illustrated, and the illustrations are fine.
Yeah.
There's nothing wrong with them. A full-page illustration this size, you can see it well enough. You don't need it bigger than that. You don't need
You don't need an easel to hold this thing. That's kind of what I'm feeling like lately. I'm finding a lot of really cool large books, but I feel like I need an easel next to my reading chair or my bed so I can read them because they're so huge.
Right.
When I read that up too, I thought it was really interesting because I did that book haul video, and a lot of those books that I received were old textbooks, but they're this size.
Yeah.
I recall
Well, the
going to
standard
college.
size.
Yeah, I recall going to college and having these books that are
Yeah.
especially the history books. I'm like, why does it have to be this big? And the type is 14
My
sizes.
textbooks were about like this and this thickness, and you
Yeah.
get 5 of
See,
these
mine
in a
were even
back.
bigger. I had even bigger ones. One of my graphic design books is a 14 by 18 size book.
Wow.
And I'm like, why did I risk my spine for carrying these in my backpack? But but they're so huge, and the type in them is so large. And I'm trying to figure out, why did we go from having a practical size textbook that was normal, 12-point or less font, which a lot of those consistently were,
Yeah.
to suddenly being these huge, like, why did our professors have to write to us in headlines? And they're huge, and they're obnoxious, and they're ridiculously expensive. And I'm just like, why? Why? I don't get it. I really don't get it.
That's what I did in college. Is you go and you have to buy these textbooks. There's certain books that you have to buy for your classes.
Yeah.
And they offer used books, but the ones you need for your classes are never the used ones. They're always the brand new ones.
Yes.
So you're paying full price.
You have to buy the most
And,
recent
you
5th
know,
edition.
After you spend $500 on textbooks,
Yeah, or more.
or more, then the next year you go in, you try to sell them back, and half of them they won't even take
Yeah.
because they're out of date.
Yeah, they're out of
So
date,
they
or
won't
it's like,
give you
oh,
any
you
more.
only get $20 for this. And I'm like, but you're gonna sell it for $145 after I paid $300 for it.
It's a total racket.
It is. It is. Actually, one of the things I appreciated from that book haul was that one of the books actually had initial cost and then standard resale price literally embossed on the back of the cover. Real deep. And I was like, see, and it was like, I think original price was like $1.94 or something, and then the resale was like $1.05 or whatever, like in good condition. So it had that already on the back of the book, so you couldn't be gypped, which I thought was really smart. I'm like, you gotta figure out a better way for this. But now there's websites like readanything.com or whatever, where you can find a lot of those textbooks available just on there.
Yeah.
Or you can find, maybe outdated versions, but at least it's similar content, enough similar content that, 'cause most of the time when you get the newest edition, it really doesn't have that much edited in it.
Yeah. Well, in a lot of textbooks, some of the sciences and of course history changes year to year, but a lot of the information doesn't change. Like Newtonian mechanics has been around since Newton, and it hasn't changed.
Yeah.
And there's
What
no
more is
reason
there to
why
say?
you should
Yeah.
have to buy a new textbook if you're at Physics 1.
Yeah.
It's all stuff that's been around since the 1800s at least, and,
Yeah.
and has not advanced in the last year. So there's
Yeah.
no reason to buy a brand new textbook for that. You go and buy something published in 1920. It's, it hasn't changed.
And there's so much information too on the internet,
Yeah.
where you don't even have to read a chapter of your textbook. You can just Google the basic outline.
Yeah,
of the
although
subject.
the internet is tricky because there's so much misinformation out there now. So
Yeah, you'd have to really weed
putting
through a
stuff
lot.
up that's really just opinion, passing off as fact.
Yes, there is that issue now. But I think there's a lot of access, especially educational sites, where YouTube has tons of videos on a lot of things. Like Thing Theory. I was looking up some stuff on Thing Theory because a friend of mine had mentioned it to me, and just there's a wealth of information about it, just on the internet alone. And some of it you can tell is opinion,
Yeah.
and sometimes they blatantly say this is just my opinion.
Yeah.
Kind of stuff, but there's a lot of information out there that you could just access without necessarily needing the textbook. And a lot of the time too, I felt like I didn't even need to read my textbook in college. The lecture was enough.
Yeah.
Because a lot of the time they say, oh, well, I'm not going to touch on this subject, but they do anyway. Professors just do, because it does come up, because sometimes things just flow so well into each other that why wouldn't they actually touch on the subject and give you enough information that you can.
Well, that's the way it was in physics.
Yeah.
The lecture was the chapter, and then you read the chapter, and then you did the experiments, and it was all the same information, just presented in different ways.
Yep.
And after you've gone through the 3 different ways of presenting information, you really understand it.
Yeah. Yeah, and I felt like, especially as a kinetic learner, I learned better hands-on than I actually did through reading. So like, history classes were kind of hard for me because I'm really sucked at remembering dates. I could remember the events, could not remember the dates to save my life. Oh wow.
I laughed about that in art history because I was actually pretty good at that back when I was in school, and I was fascinated by art history, so I was constantly reading it. And on the tests for art history class, you just had to get the right century, and that just made me
Yeah, yeah.
So I put down, okay, this was 1825 to 1826 is when this
too, and a lot of the time too, though, like, I just had to remember about what time artists were alive, and like about what time movements happened.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was pretty good, I think, in art history for those things. But like, and then there are like particular art periods that really stuck with me, like the Russian constructivism movement.
Yeah.
I really enjoyed learning about that. It's a really interesting subject, and how like art influenced propaganda, which influenced culture, which influenced so many other things. So that really stuck with me. The Dada movement is a big one. Pretty much anything postmodernist is easy to remember because it's kind of everything after 1980, I think. Yeah. Andy Warhol and all that, you know, that kind of stuff. Those things stuck with me because those are things I was much more particularly interested in. The Impressionist movement was always easy for me to remember because there's some great artists that came out of that. When you started getting into like medieval and Renaissance art, movements moved more slowly, but I still like, I feel like 14th century and earlier, I just can't remember information that very well. I don't know why.
Well, most of the dates before the 1400s are not really known for sure anyway.
Yeah.
But circa
Yes.
1450 or so.
Ish, around that time.
Because so much of the documentation is just burned.
Yeah, because you know, the serfs just needed
Made
fuel for the
courthouse out
fire.
of wood.
Yeah, just needed to stay warm, so let's just take whatever we can find and just start looting.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's really, yeah. Anyway, textbooks are huge and unnecessarily expensive today, so somebody do something about it. Buy them digitally.
It's not gonna,
And the
it's not gonna
digital,
change until somebody stops making a lot of money.
yeah. And like, even the freaking digital versions are so expensive still too. Like, there's so many cool books that I want to get, but they're technically textbooks. Because there's a lot of cool like art history and like, I'm really into. There's like this really cool book that I want to get that's about like typography that's influenced by African culture.
Okay.
And it's kind of goes like original written African language into modern interpretations of it and modern, you know, in modern influenced typography and stuff from these original languages, written languages. It's technically a textbook.
Yeah.
So it's really expensive even to get a digital version. I think it's like $300 for the original and like $194 for the digital
Oh
version.
my god.
And I'm like, I mean, yes, I know a lot of work went into researching this, I'm sure, but at the same time, like, it's just so outside of, especially because typography is just a hobby for me. Like, as a designer, I probably should be take it more seriously. But it is such a hobby thing because it's so fun to me. So it's like, it's just not worth it to get it, unfortunately. But yeah. What can you do? Especially now with the paper shortage, I'm sure that textbooks are
Gonna
not
try
gonna
books out.
It is.
New books. But like I say, used books are used, recycled.
Yes.
Lots of great stuff that's been already published and already out there. Somebody's read it and decided they don't want it. It's at St. Vincent de Paul for 50
Yep.
cents.
Yes. Find a lot there. But also like Book Nook. I love our local Book Nook, the used book shop that we have.
Oh, the one I
Yeah.
took you to?
Yeah.
Yes, I love that place
I
too.
love that place. It's like like things are organized, but it's just in such a hodgepodge manner. You feel like you're walking into like a Harry Potter store.
Yeah.
Where everything's just like precariously placed and they're so fun to dig through and stuff, and I can find cool textbooks there too. A lot of people resell them to her and it's really awesome. Love it there. So yeah, used
Or
books.
online book sellers like Bound and Tag. They sell
Bound
used
and
books.
Tag,
We're
yep.
gonna do a video on that.
Yep.
Date with a book.
Date with a book. I'm gonna dress up real pretty. I'm excited. And we're gonna have spaghetti. I better bring a bit.
I'm cooking, so bring Tums or something.
You'll be fine. It's hard to ruin spaghetti. It's hard.
It is, but I can do it.
I burned the water.
Usually I don't cook the noodles long enough and they kind stick together.
Yeah, I don't mind them al dente though. I feel like it helps the structure of the food because sometimes the sauce makes it too flappy and then mushy. So it's okay. I'll still eat it and I'll be polite. I won't say it. I'll tell you off video. I'm sure it won't. But yeah.
But I'm making I like my sauce. Gail doesn't for some reason. I like making my own sauce. I get just tomato sauce and I add my own spices and I think it comes out really good.
Yeah, I do something, apparently it's Greek, but I love doing it. And my family is not Greek as far as I know. But I like adding cinnamon to my sauce sometimes. Just a very small amount. Kind of sweetens it up without adding sugar to it because I'm a diabetic. So like adding sugar to stuff is not a smart idea for me, but it still sweetens it up enough. It gives it an extra flavor, but a lot of people, my family does not like doing it, but I like. Yeah, it's really good. Apparently it's like a Greek thing. At least someone told me it was. I'm not sure if that's true or not.
Well, there's a lot of those weird ingredients. Like, place I used to work, they had a barbecue chicken day, and they would make the barbecue sauce themselves. And they would come to the bar and want like 5 pitchers of Coca-Cola.
Oh, yeah.
I said, wow, you guys must be thirsty. No, we use it in the sauce.
Yeah, I've seen the Coca-Cola
barbecue
barbecue sauce, and there's a grape jelly barbecue sauce. It's really good. I use that for my weenies. When I make the barbecue weenies, I usually do the grape jelly and ketchup and all the other. Oh, it's really good. It's very good.
So yeah, that's tomorrow night. We're gonna film
we're
those, so
gonna
those
film
will be going up in the next few weeks.
I'm excited.
Enough videos that we don't have to try and read a book a week anymore. Because we're not succeeding at that.
No, life is getting really busy, but I think that's the nature, just the nature of the time right now, especially with, we're designers, so like, I feel like as a designer, you're more on call than people realize, especially me being self-employed. Like, I contract to work during the week, but it's kind of like, if someone contacts me and says, hey, this file is corrupt, I have to go on no matter what time it is because I'm at the mercy of their schedule a lot. Like if they're trying to get the production done and trying to get things printed on time, and if the file corrupted in the email, I have to go and resend it to them or reformat it or do all kinds of other stuff. So you're more on call, I think, than people realize.
Well, websites too. If they tell you to put something up there and then they call you on Saturday and say, we did it wrong and there's legal issues with it, you can't say, well, I'll do it Monday morning.
No, you have to do it now and get it done. And we are in a very much a culture of instant gratification. And as designers, we have to meet that. We have to, because otherwise you become obsolete like that. Like, it's just the way it is.
It's usually, you know, like I say, situations like that, it's text that was supplied to me, I copied and pasted, I didn't write it.
Yeah.
Somebody else screwed up, but it becomes my problem to fix it.
Yes, because you're the one who has access to the back end,
Yeah.
or you know, you're the one who has access to the file or whatever. Because that's another thing too. A lot of people delete their files when they're done with it. I'm finding that with clients a lot. For like people delete the files, so you basically have to go in and rebuild it. If you don't, like, I save everything for many years, or until like, unless someone dies and the company goes out, I hang on to everything.
Me too.
In my terabyte, big terabytes, hard drives. But people delete stuff. Or it accidentally, you know, goes missing and you don't know where, so they need it immediately for this because they're having this project. So you have to cater to their whims.
Yeah, I've had a total of 28 terabytes storage space for all my stuff.
I got 3 terabytes right now. 3 different hard drives for different things. Like one is just for saving my files, one is for saving specifically client files, and then the other one's to back up my computer.
Yeah. Well,
So
I
I have
keep all
things-
these videos.
yeah.
That takes a lot of disk space.
It does, it does. A lot of the videos that I make and edit, I hang on to all those too, so I just gotta hang on to stuff in case things go wrong. So it's just the nature of stuff. So reading in between all of that is really difficult. Plus right now I have, you know, it's summer, so all your friends want to do things before fall gets too cold. So everybody wants to do stuff, and then especially interspersed between the pandemic, like everybody's missed each other so much, like everybody's just trying to cram in time for each other. in case it goes too hot again. You know, so it just gets busy. It gets busy. I'm expecting for winter, it's probably going to slow down considerably because I think a lot of my friends are far enough away that once the snow flies, nobody wants to go anywhere. Pretty much. So.
I'll drag you out to art museums then.
I would love that. I would love that.
If they aren't all closed down by COVID.
Yeah, hopefully. I want to make another trip back over to the Milwaukee Art Museum soon.
Yeah.
That would be fun.
Yeah, I've been waiting for some, that's the other thing COVID did is it stopped a lot of really good exhibits. And they just had smaller, lamer exhibits at all the local art museums.
Yeah.
There hasn't been anything all that interesting.
Or they're just doing them all virtually.
Yeah.
Like the Guggenheim in New York. They had a cool virtual thing, but it's not as cool as going into the building and actually seeing the architecture and being able to stand on the bottom floor and look up. Like that place is not just a gallery, it is an experience. You don't get that through virtual tours.
No.
Still did the virtual tour, but it's not the same.
No.
Definitely not the same.
Well, it's none of the same as actually standing in front of a physical painting or sculpture and looking at it.
Yeah.
It is a different experience.
I'm gonna give metaphysical, but it's also like a different energy. Like there's an energy about that place when you go in. Just the people who are in awe, like you kind of get this sense of awe when people walk in because it's very hushed. Nobody's talking loud. Everybody's just staring at murals for a long time because they're
That's what I hate
observing.
about it. I think
Yeah.
everybody should be talking.
I know, but there's still that
Noisy.
energy of like awe that's there that you just don't get to experience if you're not physically present.
Yeah.
And that's just the power of the human spirit. Sometimes it's not great either because some people are just assholes. But like I feel like places like that tend to attract people who love being there and love the work and genuinely appreciate it, and there's just a sense of awe there that you just don't get when you're in a virtual space. I feel the same way about virtual books. Like digital copies are easy for me to access, but I would
You don't
rather.
get this from an ebook. The
Yeah.
experience of this slip case and the pages and everything,
Yes.
it just doesn't happen.
It's a user experience.
We've tried, and
Yeah.
you just can't do it with that technology.
No, it just doesn't work. But yeah, it is what it is.
And music too. I don't know if,
Yeah.
which one is it? I think it's Tchaikovsky's Fifth. There's one movement where all the strings are playing staccato, plucking the strings.
Yeah.
And he arranges it so that if you're in a concert hall listening to it, it
like sweeps.
kind of runs around the stage, and you can hear it from the different places, and you just can't get that from a recording. It doesn't come through.
No. Even with Bose speakers, I've listened to things on really nice, high quality speakers where it does the switch, but it's not the same as being physically present. It just
No.
isn't.
It's not the same thing.
Yeah.
You have to go to a symphony orchestra and listen to that piece in order to really understand what he was trying to do there.
Yeah. Yep.
So
That's what it is.
the physical experience is definitely better than the digital.
It is. I think that's why we're built to be so sensory. Why would we limit the sensory experiences if we don't have to?
Yeah.
You know, I mean, you may get it if you have to,
But we are because it's convenient. I mean, it's a great thing to be able to go on Project Gutenberg and get
and just get
anything
yeah,
that's, not copyrighted.
yeah,
All those great old books, but it's still not the same as having a copy of that book. There was one book I wanted to mention that I just read about in this one. It's called The Cheetah Girl.
oh,
And yeah, it is about a girl who is part cheetah.
did she escape from the island of Dr. Moreau?
Well, I kind of think it was inspired by that because it is. A lot of the 1920s British novels were heavily into eugenics.
That was a big thing.
Before the Nazis, people did think it might be a good thing to
Yeah,
be able
to
to
create a superior.
control who, and it still would be nice to be able to have babies that aren't going to be born
Build a baby.
really bad diseases or whatever, which was the impetus behind it. But of course, it went bad when people started to think we can build a master race.
Yeah.
But anyway, this book is about a girl that is kind of a combination of genetics, and so she is genetically quite cheap. But this book is extremely rare.
Yeah.
You can't get a digital copy of it. I looked.
Okay.
I could not find a digital copy of this book.
Yeah.
It's only been published a couple of times.
Yeah.
And so I went, the most recent publication was by a British publisher that's still in business, Tartarus Press. They published it, I think, in 1998.
Yeah.
But they're another one, they publish so many copies it goes out of print. Sometimes they reprint, but this one they didn't. Maybe it didn't sell well enough. Anyway, I found a copy online of the Tartarus Press edition.
Wow.
And, well, even that one, most of the I actually found a number of copies.
Yeah.
There were only 200 printed.
Oh wow.
Yeah,
So
it
it's
was
really
or
limited
no,
edition.
No, I'm wrong. There was only 100 printed
Oh.
copies of the Tartarus Press book.
Oh.
And I found 3 for sale. 2 of them were for sale for like $700.
Yeah.
But there was one I found for a little over $100. I bought it yesterday, and that's gone.
Yay.
So we're gonna get a copy. It's not the first edition, because I can't remember, this is 1920s. There is a little bit of sexual content,
Yeah.
but not, not even as much as you get in ACOTAR.
Yeah.
So it's tame to us today, but in
Yeah.
1920s,
Yeah.
you didn't do that. And so this
Yeah.
book got banned. So it was only privately printed in 20 copies. The original publication.
The numbers you're giving me are getting considerably small.
Yeah, well, that was the first edition.
Yeah.
They only, because it was being banned, because the publishers wouldn't touch it, it got privately printed, only 20 copies. So copies of that book, I didn't
Yeah.
find any editions
Yeah,
of that
yeah.
probably available, but they probably go for thousands of dollars. So the Tartarus Press book from 1998 is the only one that you're gonna get.
Okay.
And so I bought that.
Nice.
And
I'm
I
excited.
got that coming. Yeah,
I'm gonna have to borrow that one when you're done with it.
And
Sounds good.
Mike Ashley is saying it's a really good book worth reading. So
It must be
I'm
good.
trusting that. Yeah,
Yeah. I
trust
feel that way
it.
with Neil Gaiman. Anything Neil Gaiman says is gold, I'm like, it absolutely must be.
It's those British people.
Yeah.
If they say
They
it's
just
great,
know.
it's great.
They just know.
They have good taste.
Yeah. No 50 Shades of Grey for them.
No. So
Anyway, I shouldn't knock until I try it. I haven't read 50 Shades of Grey, but
I
I just hear
haven't
it's
either.
not.
Well, and that one, I saw. I don't know how accurate this list was, because there's lots of lists like this all over the internet. But it has only been outsold by the Bible and Don Quixote. 50 Shades of Grey is like the number 3 biggest selling book of all time, as far as numbers go.
Probably. I mean, bad. No publicity is bad publicity.
Yeah.
A lot of people probably bought it out of curiosity, but I see it in thrift stores all the time. So clearly, not everybody absolutely loved it when they read it.
No, but
But it is very accessible.
maybe it's trash, but people want it.
Yeah.
Okay? You can't call it bad when you have that many people who want to buy this thing.
What
and
you
read it.
can call it though is average. Because things made for the average person can end up just being average things.
You can write arbitrary rules of what great literature is supposed to be
Yeah.
and say, well,
Again, it
Shakespeare
is
did it this
subjective.
way, and if you don't do it Shakespeare's way, it can't be great literature. But the way culture and literature and art moves forward is through what people are looking for and what people want, what people will respond to.
Yeah.
That's what is speaking to people, and that's what is in touch with the society of the time. So 50 Shades of Grey is that biggest selling of a book.
Because
That
sex
says
sells.
something about our culture and what we are looking for in general as a culture from our art.
Toxic masculinity.
Well,
Oh well.
and there's a whole market.
Again, I'm making assumptions based off of other people's reviews. I have not read it myself, so I really shouldn't knock it
There's a
before I try
whole
it.
market of a genre called New Romance or something like that, that is all about women being bullied by men.
Yeah. Dom sub, they call that.
But the women fall in love with these men and end up with them. And,
Yeah. It's kind of a brutality sort of situation.
and when I learned about this, I thought, wait a minute, what happened to feminism? What happened to women being
People
respected?
turn that on its head, though. We want to be. It's this whole culture. There's this meme out there. It's like women want to be called a slut in bed, but they get mad. They cry when you call them a bitch in a fight. And then someone pointed out, it's like, yeah, because they want to be sexually dominated, not emotionally abused. Maybe that's the whole point. I don't know.
Yeah, but while the bullying stuff, it's, I mean, the women who are, if you're just reading it, fine. But if you then are going through that in your life, understand, you're probably going to end up in a situation where you could get
Legal
killed.
trouble. Or legal trouble.
Well, I mean, at the very least, you're involved with a guy who is never going to let you go and will even kill you than let you be free or be yourself. And it's not a good thing. You know, these books are harmless enough as just books to read for entertainment, but if that spills over into your life, it's not going to be like the book. It's going to be really, really, really bad.
Yeah. It's not going to be good stuff. Anyway.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I don't have much else, I think, to bring up other than rambling. I'm really good at rambling, especially when I've had espresso. Just keep going.
That's what gets you drunk, huh?
Yeah. I'm very affected by caffeine. It's the only way I get out of being an introvert. Push through my introvertedness with having to socialize. Just caffeinate me a lot. And I'm good.
So we should probably wrap up this video already.
Yeah,
It's
almost an hour.
again.
Oh well.
See you in 2 weeks. And before then, we'll have some more videos we're shooting tomorrow night.
I'm excited. Thanks for joining us, guys. We'll see you next time. Bye.